ruined a funny moment with the snake because you guys never actually took any time to like try to play around with that snake. And I was kind of curious if anybody had any thoughts as to what you all were interested in attempting to do or would have kind of done on those days before we kind of like fast forwarded so I could put you in front of Kir Sabal at the end of the session.
But I think we definitely would have tried to tame it at least a little bit, right? At feeding, so we wouldn't get our hands taken off.
So do you think Island was going to be that person when you say it like that?
Totally, totally. He tries animal handling skills on that thing.
So let me get an animal handling check from you.
Well, I rolled it, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah, it came through.
Ah, there it is. Oh, look at that.
So the first time you go to feed it, you are going to find the creature certainly a little bit more receptive of you. I think kind of the first time maybe Jarek went to feed it, it was a little bit more riled up. In the moment when he went to open the bag, I think that was on the first night right after you all. I think it was constrictor snake that Jarek went to feed it. So maybe on one of the later days you were able to give it a little bit of that snake meat, and it's going to be a little bit more tamed for you. Um, it seems like this thing is relatively at home inside of that bag. It seems like perhaps like just like quickly dropping in a little bit of meat is perfectly functional. But at present, you guys have a good start to being able to deal with this creature. Um, at present, it certainly isn't a pet. You definitely shouldn't consider this something that you can like play with outside of the bag. It is a flying creature and it will fly away. And it is still a. I feel like all lizards are carnivorous, so I guess maybe they're omnivores actually. But it is something that is certainly capable of biting you, and it is certainly capable of flying away. Um, and over the next few days, you can kind of treat with that and care for it in the same way. I feel like perhaps the most interesting thing might be trying to give it water inside of that backpack. But I am sure on some level, maybe like setting down the bag and taking like a little piece of like leaf or gourd type of thing, you can almost put like a little water dish in, and perhaps give the thing water. But in the long run, I think you guys can consider that over those few days. You do a pretty solid job of caring for it and recognizing that this is a wild creature, but you have ways to treat with it that are safe. And again, that basically means like it's pretty well at home in the dark bag. It's needs food, needs water, and will fly away, but it gives you a place to kind of start with that idea.
Cool. Does anybody want to name it?
Well, it seems to hate you least, Island. So I would say, if you want to give it a name,
Mitzi. Let's call it Mitzi.
You can call it whatever you want. As long as it stays away from me, I'm happy.
Well, you might need to know its name when it bites you, so that'd be helpful. But we'll work on taming it.
I'm
Go.
pretty sure I won't be yelling its name when it bites me. It's gonna be something else.
So we're at the bottom of this. We're at the bottom of this place, looking up at all our karu, right? And it looks hard to climb. Snake really. I think we'll keep the snake in the bag for this episode.
So I think as far as where we left off, like Jarek said, you all had basically been noticed. I think your approach was not terribly stealthy. You are vaguely aware that you expect to meet Nephir in this location. And at present, these people are kind of moving about these actual paths. But as Let's see. Probably the first like three or four seem to fly up and back into some of the higher levels. So this little map, like the closest one to the south is the lowest level. And then it's probably another like 200 or 300 feet up to that second tier, and then about another 200 or 300 feet up to the third tier. The most northwestern of those structures is the highest and the tallest, and that one is probably like 600 to 700 feet, like up this kind of cliff face. Um, but as you all approach, you will see the first few to notice you start to fly up past the structure with the sign of Ubtoa, which is the kind of northeastern structure, which is like a three-tier structure, and they will fly to that highest point, which is the northwestern structure. After that, you're going to kind of see as they start to move along and kind of spread back out before you see as some of the creatures coming back out of that northwestern one will fly back down, and you can see as some of the creatures coming from like the lowest and the middle tier are going to start to kind of like drop off of the edge and more or less are descending towards you all. They do have weapons in hand, but they are descending towards you. What kind of thoughts do you all have as these creatures are kind of just like falling in like a controlled drop?
I think peaceful. I'm trying to make peaceful signs and want to tell them that we were invited, right?
I think like Jarek would be kind of holding out his hands to show, up above his head to show like no weapons, and maybe kind of like waving them, kind of back and forth. And I don't know. I don't know. We can tell like the creatures apart at this distance, or how high above this they are. But like once they maybe get within what we think might be uh, shouting distance, Jarek might like say the name Nephir to try to, we're here to see Nephir. Uh, yeah.
He's
Yeah, so that was
freaking out.
part of my question to go back to Island. What are you actually doing to like be peaceful? What are you trying to say? What are you kind of thinking there?
Well, I wanted to say we were invited by nephew, hands, up, sort of open, trying to be everything's okay,
Gotcha.
calming,
What kind of thoughts
persuasively
is
calming them.
what kinds of thoughts is Taryn doing?
Yeah, basically, Tyrion is following suit, both hands up in the air, doing like the politician or princess wave, or what you want to call it, trying to keep a friendly smile.
Let me get a persuasion from you all. All three of you can do a persuasion here. Crushing it. So yeah, as they land, you all are going to see the first few of these creatures land in a more kind of defensive positioning around you all. Let me get a perception from you there, Jarek. I guess I could have just gone off your passives too. Um, yeah, I think for what it's worth, you all are going to notice pretty quickly that Nephir is not among those who have actually flown down here. Perhaps you notice a little bit of a reaction with the use of his name, but the first of these creatures is just going to kind of call to you all. You've come through the forests to our land by whose invite?
Uh, Nephir. We had helped him escape from the Terra folk on Firefinger. He invited us to come see him when we were able.
And were I to tell you that Nephir has never returned from his own searches, what have you to say with your knowledge of him going missing?
The last we had seen him, he had indicated he would be, I believe he had indicated he would be returning this way. He took his leave of us after we fought off the last of those things on Firefinger. We've uh, we've not seen him since. We presumed he would get here before we did.
How many days hence has it been since you passed by our friend?
It's about 9. Is that right?
I mean, for what it's worth, yeah, I think that's about good. But in the long run, like if you tell them how long it's been since Firefinger, that also functions. But yeah, I think you guys are about like a 10-day out of Firefinger. I think it was like 3 or 4 to Mesro, and about like 6 or 7 from there. Um, yeah. So the next thing you're going to see is kind of as they kind of step back a little bit, and this one who's been kind of speaking to you is going to kind of step back towards another, and they pass a few words between them in damn, I want to say Aqua, but I can't think of the actual language of the Aarakocra.
Orin, I think, right? Is that the elemental air language?
Orin is definitely one of them. Yep. Okay. It's Orin and Aarakocra. It's quite literally their name. I like had the name of their gods is what I was thinking. So yeah, they're gonna kind of pass like a few words between them, and looking back over to you, you'll see as the kind of two step back forward, and we will bring you to the house of cleansing, and you will be held where we will ask more of what has happened with our lost friend.
So Jarek's going to kind of look towards Island and Taryn and then back to the Aarakocra. Um,
Alan's thinking about does he have any insight into whether that seems like a normal ritual? Seems like it in his sort of
You could roll an
anthropological
insight
way.
check here. So there is definitely a little bit of like an oddity going on here. Perhaps among the things that you can pick up is this idea that they're not necessarily like an open society. Part of what you can kind of pick up from the actual walkway up is they don't really have any living arrangements for people who can't fly. So they're not necessarily a group that is ready to welcome you to their homes. And perhaps that, like from an anthropological like point of view, you're kind of looking at it like maybe that's where something's wrong. But you definitely do pick up on there is something wrong with what this person is saying to you. You can kind of see the hints in the way that they're talking to the other ones, like something is being hidden in those moments. And perhaps it's that kind of thing. But as you're having this kind of conversation with them, they seem to be trying to find a way that is welcoming to you. There is like a little bit of a stress in their voice that perhaps they are worried you are an enemy, and perhaps they don't want to offend you because you might be a friend. And I think that's kind of the type of thing that you would be picking up on at this point.
So I'm going to give Jared a nod. Like that seems like the cleansing space seems okay.
We are happy to answer any questions you have, anything we might know that might be able to help you find F here. Uh, we are also a bit perturbed that he has not returned.
So the two who have kind of like moved like forward towards you are going to pass a few more words in or in between them, and the one who was kind of brought forward afterwards is going to kind of like step back towards the other and pretty much kind of share that same message. At this point, you all can probably understand that one of these creatures speaks common, and perhaps that second one understands bits of it, but doesn't necessarily speak it. Um, so they're almost like relaying this message between their own group. And then the one who is still kind of closest to you all at this point is, we will fly you up to the middle tier of our um, I feel like it makes more sense for him to just say, "We will fly you up to the House of Cleansing." And he's going to point to that building that is effectively on the kind of like central eastern tier of this structure. And it basically is the building you can see, like where the central tier enters in. And then things kind of exit out into the stairs that go up towards like the actual like large monastery structure there. Um, I think it would make sense for Island to have a rather solid understanding that that is housing on those lowest levels. They all look exactly the same. And then the things that actually matter basically start with that house of cleansing as well. I think that's something else that wouldn't really be too far fetched for you to kind of see a little bit of cultural significance there. But as they tell you they will fly you up, they're going to ask, we would require that you leave your things behind, and we will bring them up after you. He's effectively saying they are going to disarm you and take your things and bring you up like just your person.
Sure, we can disarm. Can I keep my rings, or do you need me to take off everything?
Your weight is perhaps the least significant. And I'll kind of like nod your head to you. Or nod his head, not your head.
So Jarek will kind of a little hesitantly, definitely, but he will eventually move to start kind of like he'll take like off his pack and then like the weapons belt, and he'll kind of motioning towards the hilt. He'll just like I would ask that uh, take care of these. Um, but yeah, he will comply with the request to, I guess, essentially lighten themselves. Um, though again, a bit hesitantly.
I'm gonna drop his packs and keep though his kind of cartography case and his holy symbol and his armor. He's not getting undressed.
So how much does Island and how much does Jarek weigh effectively then with your armor and that kit on you? Like what's your weight at?
Uh, okay. Give me a second. I'll tell you that.
Like if you have your just basic weight set, you should be able to look at that under details. And then what I think both of you are wearing leather armor. Is that like 10 something pounds, 5 pounds?
Yeah, so Jarek weighs 180 plus the studded leather, which is I have to look it up real quick.
Like if you went into your inventory, you should be able to see that as well.
Oh yeah, studded leather is 13 pounds.
And so um I've got 150 plus I'm 171 pounds.
And then with like just like the regular clothes and stuff. So Jarek probably you're looking at probably around 200, a little bit less
Wait,
once he
you're
takes off
carrying
like
another
the weapons and
150 on Island?
I lift 150 pounds and is
Okay,
wearing studded
okay,
leather armor. Got a 6-pound
I
pouch
got you.
that he won't let go of. And I guess
Um,
my holy simple weighs nothing, but I'm keeping
yeah,
it. So
they definitely don't really treat with like sub pounds. It's one of the things that like kind of sucks about collecting a bunch of gems. Is you can never put in like ounces. It just doesn't even recognize those things. So I think what is going to probably happen is pretty much as soon as Taryn kind of says like, can I keep my rings, like, and the one kind of nods to him, one of them is going to kind of pick him up and just like soar up into the air. He's going to be kind of like taken up into the air quite quickly, and with little kind of fanfare to it. As far as the other two go, it'll kind of be a quick little moment where, like, some of them will look over you and kind of, I think probably each of you stands almost like a foot taller than most any given Aarakocra. They're about like 5 or so feet tall, probably varying a little bit between 4.5 and 5.5 feet tall. And you'll see as they kind of look over you and we don't intend to keep you as prisoners, and it would lighten our load if you would be comfortable enough to remove your armor. This is not a place of bloodshed.
so Jarek will, considering he's already kind of disarmed himself, and it might be kind of nice to actually get out of the armor for a little bit anyway, even if it's not particularly heavy. It's still probably given the humidity and stuff. So he will nod and start to move to remove the studded leather. I think it takes about a minute to get rid of it, right? To doff it.
I believe that sounds right. I think light armor is actually super quick.
and then I'll do the same.
So, as the two of you remove your armor as such, they're going to take a few moments before they fly you up. Probably in the time that you are still removing your armor, the one that brought up Terran is going to return back down, and will kind of land and grab his things and start to fly up. And one after another, these, I think I said 4 Aarakocra at the start, are going to start to basically ferry you all and your stuff up here. When they get you up to this kind of middle level, you are going to be a few 100 feet over the floor of this valley. Looking down, you're probably 300-400 feet into the sky, and out to the south, there is just dead forest. There is signs of like dead trees kind of growing up out of this area. There is certainly signs of rock and rubble, but most of what you would probably pick up is just kind of like this fetid swampland. Um, and while it is not like immediately encroaching on Kir Sabal, it is like fully in view in this massive like open area. And that is the knee wastes. I really need to figure out how to say that guy's name. But he is basically that is Rosny. And this is the knee wastes that you guys would have on your map, just kind of south of Kirsabal, and you have a very good view of it as you get up to this structure. The structure itself is cut into the stone. The wood beneath your feet is certainly aged, but it's kind of like a stucco structure that kind of comes out onto these platforms. And when they open the actual door, the inside of this location is rather bare. You're going to see those two little torches that are lighting the actual area, and there is a flowing fountain that just kind of has like a constant drip to it. And up above you, about like 20 feet high, is a ladder that seems to lead through the ceiling above you, where you can see some more light in that actual area. But at present, they are going to bring you into this room. The one that you've been speaking to is going to basically ask you all, realistically, the one who drops off Taryn is actually going to essentially say to Taryn, if you would be kind of, no, can't speak to you, is just going to kind of set you down there. The one who can speak to you all will eventually come up to you and ask you all to effectively wait here, and we will be back for you shortly. And probably a few minutes after that, somebody's going to return with food for you. But what's kind of like your first thought as you guys are kind of just brought to this little waiting room?
So once,
Should we wash? That's my first thought. Go ahead, Derek. Sorry.
yeah, so like once we kind of have been left alone for a minute or two, Jarek will like looking towards Island. Do you think we should? Do you think we should mention this the ritual that Nashir mentioned, dance of the Shaba?
Yeah, yeah, we probably want to mention that. Ingratiate ourselves as much as we can, prove our knowledge of Nafir.
Suppose I'm just worried. Perhaps it's something that is not meant to be shared by outsiders. I don't know if they. But perhaps it would make them believe our story more. Too much about their culture.
Well, they mistrust us. Um, Maybe describing a bit more of the circumstances of our meeting with Nafir that ends at he suggested we should come. There was a ritual he wanted to perform, and we don't know much about it. Maybe that's the way to go, is to be obtuse. But I think we have to tell them a little bit more about what we know without patting ourselves on the back. Maybe his family here who'd want to hear what happened.
I'm kind of worried about why he hasn't arrived yet. Because, well, he can fly and he was going here directly after Firefinger. He had a detour and we still got here first, so something must have happened to him.
So, probably within the first few moments of you all kind of sharing those initial thoughts that each of you are having, that's when one of them would return, um, looking familiar enough that you recognize the actual person, but you don't. It's not one of the ones who can, or it's not the one who can speak to you, and they are just going to have kind of a plate of uh, probably like vegetarian food. I feel like that sounds about right. Almost like if anybody's familiar with kind of like Spanish tapas, where it's like rolled leaves, a few kind of like berries, and it is more or less like a large plate, probably about like a meter wide or like 2 or 3 feet wide, and just kind of like laden with food that is um, pretty generous kind of lunch for a few people. Maybe enough that like your group is kind of well taken care of. Essentially, we've got your full group of what is it, at least 5 people kind of traveling with you right now. We're generic about whether it's 5, 8, or 14. But this would include having, as far as I'm concerned, you all still have Kroot with you, you still have Eku with you, and it is at very least the 3 of you adventurers. Um, but they will kind of drop that off, and kind of bowing to you, leave through that same door, where you are still inside of that kind of lower level of the cleansing house.
Yeah, so Jarek would try to kind of convey his gratitude for the food, kind of like like with a nod, knowing he can't really communicate verbally, but he would probably still say like thank you and nod, and then probably once yeah, he would go ahead and eat a bit of the food after it was offered, thinking it might be rude not to. I guess imagining that, there's no, it's not like they're going to poison him. They could have just dropped him if they wanted to do something to him. So,
Do you all have any other thoughts before a little bit more time passes?
No, I think we just want to engage the one who speaks to us when they come back. Anybody want to climb that ladder? What do you think's going on up there?
I, I'd suggest we probably not do too much exploring just yet. We don't want to upset our guests or up, upset our hosts.
Well, when
But
they come, go ahead. Sorry.
but Jarek's also kind of thinking along similar lines of Taryn. Like he's wondering like what could have happened to Nephir in the interim, like, and trying to think like, did he mention going anywhere else? I thought he intended to come straight back here, but perhaps I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I thought he was coming here, but he got captured once. He could get captured again.
So after a few minutes of you all kind of like debating this idea, should we climb up and see what is above us? What sort of things are going through your head? It won't be long before you have a return of the Aarakocra who was speaking to you. Um, they are going to come into this same room with you, and will kind of sit down. Did everybody effectively eat?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess really what I'm saying is like, does it look like you guys ate?
totally.
yeah. Taryn would have also taken some of the food and eaten.
So when they kind of like walk in, they're going to kind of like sit down onto the floor, and more or less like look to you all. I feel like, assuming you guys are just kind of all around, they might just find like one of the more open spaces. You'll see that there is a certain level of their wings, like across like their back, takes up a lot of extra space. So a good bit of how he sits is preparing for his wings to kind of have a place to be out behind him. Probably ends up kind of like kneeling into the floor more than like a cross leg position, but will kind of like come into the room, looking around, seeing that everybody is essentially still here, is going to kind of continue. Um, we are concerned that you have word of Nephir and know to come here. You say that you were able to release our friend from the Terrafolk. How long was he held there? I don't think any of you guys know that. That wasn't meant to be a trick question.
No, I was wondering because I wasn't there. I wondered if maybe you guys did know that. But we did. Thank you for the food, and we encountered the Terra folk, and we freed Nafir from a cell. But he didn't tell us how long that he was there. He seemed okay. Like it must have been some length of time. He was exhausted and dirty, but we don't really know. I don't think. Jarek, is that right?
Yes, I don't recall him saying how long he had been captured, but he was not alone. He did tell us that he had been traveling with others, but that they had been. Um, it seemed that he was the last.
So a kind of like generic questioning is going to kind of happen with this guy, where over the next like half hour or so, they're just going to have you recount kind of the happenings on top of Firefinger. Overall, you all seem to be telling the truth. If I can get you all to roll a persuasion for me, that would be wonderful. I feel like Nephir gave you the name of the uh Aarakocra like in charge here. Does anybody remember that name and or use that name as kind of like a bargaining chip? Do you say it?
I don't have in my notes whether he told us. I noticed that he said, oh, maybe when he told us he can petition Ashara. Maybe I don't know if I put it together, but maybe Ashara is the name of the leader. I
Gotcha.
assumed
So
it was like the god.
I think that would be viable enough if you were kind of recounting things and at some point you say he had told us to come here and petition Ashara to do the dance of the seven winds for us. That is certainly one of the kind of phrases that will perhaps garner a little bit more attention from this Aarakocra. Probably shortly after kind of that, effectively like recounting the end of your story with Nephir, everything that kind of like passes between Firefinger, Mesro, and coming back down here afterwards will be much quicker. The questions are certainly not nearly as in depth, but after a little while, he's going to kind of like stand again, kind of bow to you all, and ask effectively if you would be kind enough to wait just a few more moments. One more of our tribe will be back with you shortly.
Jarek will
Sure.
nod.
Should we cleanse ourselves with the water? Is that a thing we should be doing?
The house of cleansing is our. This is our place to cleanse, to rise to the higher levels of our monastery. None are to enter uncleansed of the world above. At present, it would be best if you do not. And effectively, kind of what he is telling you is kind of confirming that idea that these two lowest levels are living quarters. It's very mundane, and it's almost part of this ritual to come into this room where you all are, cleanse yourselves, and then as you move up to the highest level, that's kind of like that ascent into heaven kind of thing, where it is the ritual of cleansing oneself that makes you. Um, I feel like sanctimonious is the wrong word, but cleanse to enter the sanctuary. And that's kind of what they use this for. But he basically tells you that they don't really have a home that is suitable to keep you in. And there's a certain level where he's searching for words with a lot of these things. You can tell common is not his natural way of speaking about this, but he kind of like passes on that many of the homes that they could have you be in are not secure. And let me have all of you do an insight check when he says secure. So Island and Taryn can understand that when he's saying secure, he's not saying secure like holding you prisoner. Um, this is almost like one of those words that he's searching for. And at some point, maybe he kind of like turns back around and even like finishes with like, they fall. But kind of like finishes this idea that like many of those houses don't necessarily have floors. And that's kind of like a thing here is like a lot of these bird folk are perfectly happy to perch, and it doesn't really work well for your kind. But he is going to kind of take his leave here, and you all will have probably another like 5 or so minutes before somebody returns. Do you have any thoughts before um, kind of that time like arrives where you have somebody come back in?
Jarek doesn't really have. He's going to just try and I think kind of wait patiently.
What's the status of our stuff? Did they bring it?
Yeah, everything would be with you all. Like you've been returned everything.
Are we getting
So after
redressed? Are we getting dressed, boys?
I think Jarek is he then considers it, but then decides that it might be taken the wrong way if they start to rearm themselves. So he'll hold off for now.
Well, Tyrion is as dressed as he needs to be. He still has his armor and his rings. So
All right.
after a few minutes passes by, someone is going to come from above, and they are going to. I bet I'm trying to figure out if my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. Somebody is going to come from above, and as you see, their fur is going to be kind of a brilliant, like orange and red. Probably the first reaction may be, or not fur, feathers. Probably the first reaction may be to think that this is a closer feather pattern to Nephir. But as they get closer, you're going to see that this is indeed not Nephir, and they are not as colorful, though much of their kind of like down feathering is certainly a similar color, in that they are like oranges and reds, kind of like a fire sort of color of feathers. And when this person kind of like descends through this ladder, their wings seem much more beaten up. Perhaps less of a warrior would certainly be a kind of like initial thing to pick up, as this person may not fly as much. And upon kind of descending, they are clothed in kind of a blue robe, and pretty quickly kind of like place a um, effectively a shillelagh, like a short staff with a heavy head, down into the ground, and they're kind of using it as a cane to, with both hands in front, almost like right in front of their belly button, kind of like lean into this wooden cane. and you see an older figure, seems a little bit more strained over, their spine curving a little bit more as they like get to this bottom level with you all. And this figure is going to kind of like looking over you all, is going to kind of just take a moment, uh, taking a moment where they kind of look over everyone. What has brought you to Kir Sabal in search of your friend, Nefir? What cause has brought you this friendship?
Nephir had been. We were traveling to Firefinger, and when we arrived there, we happened across Nephir, who had been taken prisoner by the Terrafolk. We freed him, and in fact, he aided us in um, fighting off the Terrafolk at the summit. And
So she's gonna kind of like raise her hand to you. I'm always hesitant to interrupt people, but she is going to interrupt you probably quicker than the person, was ready to. But she's going to kind of like raise her hand to you. I am well aware of what you say has brought you into this friendship, but I am curious why you were in the jungle in the first place. Your people wander, but do not belong. You ravage and take, and yet you say you helped Nephir. And kind of like looking over you all, like for the first time, leaving eye contact with Jarek. What has brought you into the jungle?
Well, and Talon just look at Jarek and Aiden. To be honest, we are on a quest, so to say, to find what's causing the death curse on these lands, and to find a way to maybe rid these lands of the undead as well.
Roll a persuasion for me, Taryn.
It's best stat. Let's see. I'm very persuasive.
Solid. uh,
He is. He is. It might not appear that he's telling the truth, but in fact, he is. That is why we're here. There's a death curse.
Well, I am a shifty rogue. Might be hard to trust me.
and what have you found of this curse that took you to Firefinger? Is that where it originates? It is not here. We fight the undead continually.
No, that we weren't at Firefinger exactly for the curse part. We were traveling past it and, well, decided to look it over and just happened to find Nefer there. But we were actually on our way to Mesro to see if we could find some clues about the curse. Sadly, not much in the way of clues that we didn't already know. That, yeah,
yes, and we had heard that there was a mask being held by the Terrafolk that someone was interested in. Oh, as my friend here says, given what was On our way to where we were heading, we decided to take the short detour.
But we do think that we know that um, the curse originated in the ancient city.
Are you going to name the city, or are you just saying the ancient city?
I'm saying the ancient city because I'm being cagey, but also I don't want to name it and get it wrong. So I'm sort of prompting my party members too.
So she's going to look to you at that mention. And what city do you suppose the curse is originating from? And effectively, this is to see, are you going to share with her Omu that you suspect it is coming from Omu?
Yeah, no, I'm going to share that with her. That I suspect it's coming from Omu, but Omu is also a god, right? God's the trickster. Omu is the trickster god and the city, both. That's where I'm a little confused.
No, no. Shit, the
Isn't the
god's
god
name is,
Ubtao or Upto?
yeah, Ubtoa.
Okay, so Abtoa. So I'm going to tell her um, we believe it originates in Omu, and we're trying to get there. We're on our way there, but searching for clues to how we might stop it. We think this is connected to Obtoa. We noticed your temple as a symbol of Obtoa above. Maybe you know something more.
So let me have one more persuasion from Island here.
I'm giving good information, it's just not rolling well, I guess. Me and Darren.
You have come into the jungles, searching for the curse of death. You search for Omu, and you have visited Mesro. What have you found in Mesro in this time where Nephir has still been missing? That what has changed that you came here? Yeah, that just kind of feels clumsy. I feel like I'm kind of getting at she's curious about what you understand is happening in Mesro.
Well, we found evidence the flaming fist is there, but we didn't find any evidence of the curse.
Nor did we find anything that could help us point us in the right direction either. So we took a chance and went here, as Nefer had mentioned Kir Sabal, and well, we were a bit interested in the ritual of flight he was talking about.
And we sort of assume that you have a great view of things in the jungle and perhaps more information. And Nephir invited us, so we thought we would take him up. We really are quite perplexed and concerned that he's not here. Um, and we're sorry for that loss. We're disappointed.
You will be welcome to remain in Kirsabal as long as you are not troublesome. You cannot harm any while you are here. You must not break with our traditions, neither to harm, to steal, nor to lie within these sacred areas. You are not welcome to move beyond this room. We will make space in one of the homes that is more suitable to your folk. But you still must be weary. The fall is most certainly deadly for your kind. You will all be expected to help with. And she kind of like struggles for a moment, looking for like the word before she kind of like comes back with keeping your home. And when you are weary of our ways, you are welcome to go at your leisure. Do you have any further questions of me? And she's going to kind of bow her head to you. I am the eldest, Shara, and you are welcome to our home.
Thank you, Ashara. I'll bow back.
Do you have any idea what might have happened to Fear? Could he have been going someplace else before returning? Or do you think something happened to him on the way? Is there any thought of looking for him?
So, moments after I say, don't lie while you're here, you're going to see as she kind of looks to you. Oh, I am hesitant to allow those who may disrupt delicate things in balance. And the most valuable of flowers can be killed by only the slightest of diseases. Nafir returned safely. My welcoming of you is hesitant for many reasons, and the life of Chult hangs in that balance. It was my decision to not allow Nafir to welcome you.
Well, thank you for your honesty. We're glad that he's well. Um, and we think we may be able to win more of your confidence. Um, and we hope to do that.
Yes, we thank you for your hospitality, and if there is anything we can, anything further we can do to put you at ease or to assist, please don't hesitate to let us know.
So I need to take a quick break here. Kind of same idea. Like let's take 15 and come back at 4:30. If everybody is back before then, we can hop in before then. But let's take a quick break here.
Sure.
Cool.
Okay.
So we are going to kind of continue with this moment where Ashara is going to end up leaving you all here in this room again. This time she is going to exit through the. Yeah, I guess she's going to go back through the north. I didn't actually think about this. Yeah, I think she is going to leave through the way she came, going back up the ladder. And she is going to leave you all here for a few moments. Probably about 5 minutes or less, you all will see as Nephir is going to come in through the western door on the level that you all are at. And Nephir will kind of welcome you all, effectively still translate everything through Echo, and kind of have like the little bits of greetings. But by and large, Nephir is just going to kind of confirm that effectively Ashara was hesitant to welcome outsiders, and didn't necessarily want you um, in the monastery. And yeah, I feel like we'll kind of like go about that area, like in case you all had any questions for Nephir at that point.
Yeah, I think Jarek would just kind of say, like, we're glad to see that you did, in fact, make it back safely. I hope that your offer to us and our arrival here hasn't caused you undue trouble. Was not our intention.
So yeah, he'll kind of like pass on through Echo. Effectively, he seems to have the concerns that the children of Omu are of the most important reason why Ashara does not want visitors in Kir Sabal. That he is happy you have come despite any difficulties. He believes you and his people can help all of Chult. And after she kind of like translates to him, she's going to look back and kind of like look to him, say something in Aran, and then looking back to you all. Shara has gone to gather the children of Omu, their family of kings and queens, reside here in Kir Sabal. Their children are here, and that is why she was scared to welcome you. You will be soon to meet the children.
Wow, that's quite an honor.
The princess is young and proud. She has been here for a short while of her life. The prince, he has been here nearly his entire life. But Ashara will return with them shortly, and it would do well to be careful with your speech. She is proud, and she considers herself queen still.
And have they been kept here, what, for their own protection? What? Why were they? Why have they been brought here, if I may ask?
The last queen of Omu was their grandmother, Napaka. Their mother and father have fled to avoid Ubtoa and his wrath, and the wrath of the dead. Their father was slain by Therafolk, and their mother fell to her death.
Were they traveling with you, Nafir?
So as they kind of communicate that back and forth, Eku will kind of look to you. Nefir got caught effectively in a scouting mission. And like all of the other Aarakocra of that little scouting party was slain. Um, but it was not necessarily related to those two. I think Prince Na is like 6 years old, and I think that is effectively like I feel like the mother and father were here for about a year um, before the mother was killed, like and Prince Na was born. So I feel like it was about 8 years or so that they kind of fled to this point. Um, I feel like that would probably be the extent of what Nephir knows about the royal line. Um, but on some level, they understand that within the last probably like 20 or so years, Omek the father and Razan the mother would have fled Omu, um or rather would have been like on the run kind of thing. Napaka, their grandmother, died probably 50 years ago, so there's kind of like maybe like a 20 or 30-year gap in what Nephir might understand that the family was doing. But the fall of Omu proper, like the death of the queen, was about 50 years ago.
And do you know? You say that they fled Uptoa and his wrath and the wrath of the dead. Is there a some particular occurrence that caused this wrath?
So sometimes it's kind of difficult for me to figure out what things are going on. I am pretty sure that the nine trickster gods are avatars of Ubtoa, but they're also not Ubtoa. So part of the story that you're going to gather is that at some point around the spell plague, which I think is like 150 years ago, was when Ubtoa first kind of rescinded and started to leave um, his peoples of Chult kind of to their own. Um, and it was roughly like uh 50 or 60 years ago when Rosni started to rise and come here with his undead, more or less, plague. Probably 100 to 50 years ago, that Abtoa raised the Guardians of Mesro. I don't have their names in my notes like immediately prepared, but kind of like raised those guardians up so they had like near like deity levels of magic. Um, but basically, there's kind of this like story where at some point, Abtoa stepping away from Omu was among like the first signs of Omu's fall. Um, and what they did was turn to these 9 trickster gods. And as they all started to worship, like different houses started to worship different gods, they basically fell into kind of civil warring. And then there was a point where I think the trickster gods were seen to abandon the people of Omu. And that was when the queen Dapaka was slain. And effectively, that was the end of the line of Omu, as what remained was kind of scattered to time. So that's part of where, like, there's definitely some, like, weird, convoluted stories of these gods and their avatars. And I think the fact that I don't necessarily have a clear view of it kind of fits into the fact that I don't think many of these people or things would have like a very clear view of what any given happening was.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
But I feel like part of why I say feel like the trickster gods were meant to be um avatars of Ubtoa is that Ubtoa was effectively like a oh man, not a giant, but like what came before. Um, in the
Like a
Greek
Titan.
pantheon, yeah, the Titans. He was effectively like kind of a world-sized being. And that's why like that heart, the stone heart that's like floating above Chult, that's called the heart of Uptoa. That thing is massive. It is visible from most of the jungle when you have like a clear opening view of the sky. Um, but I feel like it kind of makes sense that like all of these trickster gods follow that same idea of the maze of Uptoa. And I feel like it is basically one of those things where, like in the Judeo-Christian, like the addition of languages to the Tower of Babel, where it's like, yeah, everybody's getting along, but you're not really doing what I require of you. We're going to scatter you all to the winds and make you start fighting yourselves. I feel like it kind of fits into that same idea where the trickster gods, the 9 gods who came to be parts of Ubtoa, were used to that end of causing strife. Damn, I can't believe I can't find the name of the people that Ubtoa created in Mesro. I feel like I gave you guys that name. I just don't necessarily have it in my notes right now.
Wasn't it like Beret? Right?
Yes, that is definitely the group, the Seven Bray. And that was those are kind of like some of the dots that I feel like Kir Sabal can kind of like plug back in together, figuring out some of these things. Um, but I feel like roughly with that like gigantic amount of information, at some point Ashara is going to return to you all, and you all are going to see the 2 children. So when they return, you are going to see Ashara climb through first. And when Ashara approaches, she is going to tell you all, effectively kind of like what he's kind of like Nafir's already shared, where Nafir will, or Nashara will kind of, tell you all you will meet the flowers of Omu, the future of Chult. And she is going to first introduce Prince Na, and as she kind of like bows, you're going to see as Nafir kind of bows, and the prince is going to kind of like climb over the edge on this ladder. You're going to hear like thunk 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 thunk, as he like slides down the ladder. And anybody who's not like fully bowing their head is going to see this tiny little boy who is certainly kind of like tall and lanky. Um, Not tall. Um, like tiny and like it's weird to say like a tall child. I'm not sure how to say that, but say like 3.5, 4 feet tall, maybe like 40 pounds, but quite tall for it. I feel like that would make like a very lanky child. And he's like sliding down the ladder, very playfully thumping down to the ground. And he's just going to look up to you all as he just kind of like waves, but everybody's still bowing. And he's like, "Hello!" And then a moment later, Ashara is going to introduce and Princess Oaxana, and kind of doing the same thing where everybody bows. With this one, you're going to hear over the next like 30 seconds or so, very controlled, nearly silent footsteps before you kind of hear like the little bit of like sliding as she kind of turns at the base of the ladder. And taking a moment, you hear like a little bit of like a admonition towards her brother. And then you'll hear in common, "You may rise." And with that, once everybody looks up, you're going to see she's probably early teens, maybe 15 at the most. She's very much still a child. You'll see Prince Na is maybe 5, 6 years old. The two of them are 100% children and 100% complete opposites of each other. While he is not necessarily dirty, he is not put together in the least bit. He is very much a playful kid. While she is like adorned with jewelry, not necessarily the most amazing, like imperfect things, but she has a tiara. She's wearing golden necklaces. She has golden rings, and has nicer clothes. But it shows signs that the monks are not necessarily the people who would clothe somebody like this. You can kind of see her clothing is less than regal, but she is certainly going for that kind of like regal look. But as the two kind of like, or rather, as she welcomes you to rise, what would you all like to do as you are introduced to Princess Owaxaner and Prince Na?
Yeah, so Jarek would kind of follow the Aarakocra in his lead in terms of bowing, like in and kind of seeing the disparity between the two. He would maybe like almost like kind of like as he's rising up, almost kind of like throw a wink towards the younger kid, Prince Na. Um, but then as he rises up, uh,
Do a sleight of hand for me. Gotcha. Continue.
Yeah, so then as he kind of rises up, he would kind of speaking more formally to the princess, who seems to be kind of the more put together, more definitely more formal one. Um, you know, you thank you for gracing us with your presence. We are honored.
As well you should be. Your presence is welcome as long as you intend to help my family. I am told you have come to restore us to our city. I understand that perhaps the great potentiates of, damn, I feel like that was the wrong word, the great principalities of Waterdeep, Baldur's Gate, and the rest of your continent are too far to send more, but you all are a powerful team of experts who have come to aid us in our return to the throne. What gifts have you brought to bestow on me? You have brought gifts. Do you not understand your duties? And she's gonna look back to Ashara. Well, perhaps you do not understand the formalities, but I am correct that it is your intention to restore us to the throne of Omu?
Well, it's our intention to understand the death curse, which is sourced in Omu. Do you think your return to the throne will end that curse? Because we may be well aligned.
She's gonna look back to Ashara for a moment, and then kind of like looking back to you all. Any curse upon Omu is certainly among those things that would keep us from our throne. There are different things, the gargoyles, the protectors of the city. It is not suitable for us that you would have to cleanse.
Ah, well, we want to learn more about that. We're here to cleanse the curse, and that will certainly pave the way for your return. Can you tell us more about the other challenges? We have not heard about the gargoyles before.
So I think at that point she's just going to look back to Ashara, and perhaps just say, "These fools are not here for my throne. What is wrong with you?" And she's going to leave the room. She's going to walk back up the ladder and leave.
Well, Shara, I feel like I must have said something to spoil the visit. I apologize.
So Ashara is still more or less going to be silent at this point, as you hear like the last few moments where um, the princess kind of leaves the house of cleansing. And by the time she goes, the prince is going to kind of like step up to her, and you'll hear probably him first who says, "No, it's not your fault. She's never in a good mood. But if you put her back on the throne, that'll help." And then at that point, he's probably like crawling all over Ashara, and he's going to be like waving towards Jarek at that point. And at a moment later, Ashara will kind of return. The dangers of the jungle are centered in the city of Omu. To treat with your death curse and to cleanse their city so that they may take the throne once again, are one and the same quest. You are helping them if she does not understand it.
Well, and we did not understand it either. So thank you for enlightening us, Ashara.
Yes, please, Jared, kind of looking towards the prince. Please tell your sister we meant no offense, and
She doesn't listen to me anyway, so it doesn't really matter. She's gonna be angry.
Well, we're going to return you to the throne as well, young man.
He's gonna look up to Ashara. I don't think I have a throne.
Well, perhaps we'll just return you to the city. Have you seen Omu? I suspect you haven't.
It's not safe. And as he kind of says that, Ashara will respond, "Any who fly over the city are assaulted by the gargoyles that guard the cliffs. The city itself has sunk many hundreds of feet into the forest around, and part of the city has collapsed into the lava. The liquid stone of the, and I need the name of the mountains there from the map. The Peaks of Flame.
And are the gargoyles survivable, or is it instantly the end for your compatriots that fly across there?
What are you actually asking here? I'm not sure what you're
Have
asking.
they ever defeated a gargoyle, or are they unbeatable?
All things can be conquered, but that you can overcome a struggle does not mean that you should seek it out.
Wise words.
well, Prince Nye, don't think I have a gift suitable for your sister. Imagine you might get bored from time to time around here. Perhaps I have something that can help you pass the time. And with that, Jarek is going to kind of pull out. his dice set that he's been carrying around and kind of with another wink, kind of hold it out to the prince as a gift.
It may be wise for you to prepare a gift for the princess. Before gifting even the most mundane of objects to her brother. The prince would rise to the throne if she were not there. And the threat of a sibling is always present.
Jarek will kind of nod. I understand. And what sort of gift do you think would be appropriate for one such as her?
Gifting is just as much in the act as it is in the object. Anything that would adorn her, anything of gold, silver, and the precious metals and gems. There are many things that would be acceptable.
John would go back. Oh! And he starts rummaging through one of his backpacks and pulls out a gold ring with a, I think it's a carnelian stone. And would this suffice as a gift?
You're just going to see is not like very quickly. Yeah, she would definitely like that. And Ashara is just going to respond. It would have been wonderful had you thought of such things before her feelings were hurt, regardless of how fragile they may be.
Yes. Sorry, I actually forgot I had that.
So on some level here, it is effectively getting kind of late in this day. They are going to eventually kind of like pass their way. Um, Ashara's going to leave with Prince Na. I think they will welcome you all to basically move to one of the other houses, just kind of like along the actual like lower level of Kir Sabal. I feel like among those, the best one is probably that little house. And I think we can kind of like extend it to that to give you all like a space for the whole party. Um, and it will be obviously you can kind of see from the like the decking around it. It is very precarious to walk anywhere here. It is certainly not a easy place again for those who lack wings to travel. Um, Probably within 15 or 20 minutes of leaving, though, the prince is going to kind of return and more or less like he's not necessarily going to always be like explicitly there, but you guys are going to notice over the first hour or so of him being around that he's pretty much like enamored by you guys and is constantly spying on you. And I think it would be safe to understand again that this child has pretty much known no human except for his sister. Everybody else has been Aarakocra in this kid's life. So to see whatever we decide, five new people who were all bipeds is certainly something that is unique to this child. Um, and it's gonna kind of be like that first night for you all. Do you all have any kind of thoughts with like that first evening in Kir Sabal?
I was thinking about a gift for her and thinking about making a drawing or writing a pledge of our allegiance to her or something like that. So I think that's something we might work on if we can agree what it might be.
Oh yeah, my bad. I didn't mean to leave like the idea of the ring hanging either. But part of what I was getting at is you're not necessarily going to have access to the princess immediately here again.
Yeah, I'm up for kind of camping out in our space and being clean and under a roof for the first time in a while.
Yeah, if the prince is hanging around, Jarek would maybe offer to like tell him a story of their adventures. Kind of keeping it PG for a kid, but
So yeah, like in kind of those things, you guys have like access to like a wash bin and a place to get yourselves cleaned up. In telling stories to the prince, you're going to hear his kind of reference of pretty much anywhere you talk about, whether it's in Chult or in the mainland, he's referencing it like as like, tell me about my family's land in Waterdeep. Tell me about my family's land in Port Nyanzaru. Like you're starting to gather or garner this kind of sense that this is all his. Um, it's his sister's first, but it's his family's. And that's kind of like the level of like um their like mindset in that like this all has always been theirs and it will one day be restored. But he'll definitely be enamored by those things. I think you will find perhaps his like way of responding to you might belie the fact that this kid is quite intelligent and he is quite well read. So like when you kind of like hide details of some of like the gory stuff and like the death of some like crazy stories, he's right there like kind of picking up that um I don't know, like if you tell a story about fighting the undead eaters, like those cannibals who eat the dead, he'll kind of understand and plug in those dots where you see like this kid's also got like a very very dark image of the world because it's grounded in reality. But that's kind of like some of the things you'll pick up about this child if you spend time telling him stories like that. So I think with everything in mind, I don't think you guys necessarily did anything in particular that you need a long rest, but you can definitely take a long rest here. The next day, when that kind of picks up, you'll kind of see. Eventually, there will be like an Aarakocra who comes and actually actively takes the prince away. Kind of in one of those moments where it's like, yeah, it's past your bedtime, and Ashara noticed you snuck out. Um, so he will eventually be kind of taken away, and you guys will have the night to yourselves. But unless there's anything in particular you want to accomplish, we'll basically start with that next day. If you guys would like to discuss how you would write something to the princess, that is perfectly fine. The idea that you would write something is also perfectly fine. So it's kind of up to you guys how you would like to progress with that.
You guys want to pledge our allegiance to her, or let it be? We can do as much with doing it as saying it. But that's what I didn't have any rings in my pocket.
Yeah, I think Jarek would be definitely hesitant to offer like an oath of fealty kind of thing. Um, he's not sure. The princess's kind of regal style kind of rubs him the wrong way, but he also understands that kind of accomplishing their own task might be um, also at the same time help them. So
Yeah, she rubbed me the wrong way, but I guess we rubbed her the wrong way also, right? Do you think Ashara will help us along without the princess's kind of support? I think she probably will. I think we're okay with Ashara and Nafir. Maybe we need to ask Nafir too what he thinks we should do. He understands these folks better than we do, certainly.
well, yeah, perhaps we offer the ring, and if belatedly as a gift, and perhaps we say that we're not sure it was a worthy enough gift, and hope that she can forgive our hesitation.
We'll probably add some gold coins to it. You think that would help?
I mean, maybe not some gold coins, but I do have an onyx statue. Well, onyx statues of those little things, the Shwingas. They might be giftable too. If she finds them agreeable. But yeah.
Great. If I had some jewels, I think I'd throw them in the pack there, but I don't seem to have anything small like that in my inventory.
Well, we could offer like the ring and the statues and apologize for our rudeness the day before, and well, maybe not offer our fealty to her, but we could tell her that we would be more than happy to assist her in getting her throne back, as we are trying to rid Omo of its curse, or well, the whole lands of its curse.
Yeah, now that we know, that's what we're doing. Going to return her land to her and her city and her throne.
So while you guys discuss that, I inhaled something down the wrong pipe and have been choking and dying. So I'm glad you guys have that in mind. When you wake up the next morning, you will more or less be left to peace. On some level, there is going to be um, a couple of Aarakocra who come at different points in the day. And more or less, Eku will probably be the translator who kind of like passes on this message that like this person Sokwe is asking you to help them with some of the sweeping in the cleansing house. And then like the next person comes about, and just throughout the day or throughout the early morning, each of you is basically going to be taken away for a particular task where you are basically helping just with little kind of like house cleaning type of things.
Yeah, and Jarek might also kind of, over the course of like the evening and stuff, just ask like Eku if she can teach him a couple, very basic words in Aarakocra, like, greetings and thank you and, those sorts of things. If it's the kind of language that is actually, you know, potentially that they can speak, just sort of as a way to also similarly kind of show their hosts that they appreciate the hospitality. And he would also, you know, show no hesitation in helping with whatever tasks they're assigned.
Yeah, I feel like that's going to be kind of one of those things, in my opinion, when you start to talk about languages like this across actual different races, instead of like our human failed conception of races. Um, I think not having a beak is certainly a really big problem with speaking Aarakocran. And I feel like Auran, the language of the plane of air, I think it's kind of a pretty similarly difficult thing because it's almost like a wind and your lungs just don't have the capacity for it. So I feel like it's going to be kind of one of those things where can she teach you words? Yes. But it's very much going to be one of those things where somebody is going to laugh at you and then very quickly kind of tell you, like, I'm better at like butchering your language than you are at butchering my language. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so essentially, like it's like just physiologically, it's not possible for us to make the sounds that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I imagine it, very least like these two languages. The same thing, like when you actually think about like people who like choose to speak um what is it, not infernal, I feel like it's one of the like ones of like the rock people, like of the element of earth. It's just like you realize that's like kind of like the groaning like tectonic plates kind of sound. It's literally like rock like moving. I feel like sometimes like yeah, it's very much physiologically this is not possible for a human. Whereas like say a wizard, I feel like it might make more sense for a wizard where them speaking it is actually like using a spell to almost transform their physiological their body to be able to speak something. But in the long run, yeah, I think you can certainly do that. It's going to be one of those things where, you might be with somebody who doesn't speak the language at all. You might be with somebody who does speak it, but like along this first day, it's definitely going to be kind of like an entertaining little moment where somebody will certainly garner a little bit of joy, even if it ends up being a rather like useless activity. Like it will 100% like go over well, despite not necessarily being needed.
Right, it's a thought that counts, the effort. Yeah.
And I think part of what you all might gather here is like the children don't actually same thing like they don't speak the language of the actual Aarakocra. And there's probably only about, I think over time, like in the first day, you all might gather that there's about like 40 to 60 Aarakocra who live here. And there's probably like 4 to 8 Aarakocra who seem to actually interact with the children and be able to speak common with the children. All of them to varying degrees. Some of them are far more able to understand it and kind of like pantomime things back. Some of them are able to speak it. Ashara is among those who is most native to it or most like knowledgeable, but she's also among the oldest of the Aarakocra here. And that's kind of most of what your first day will be like, is just kind of doing chores kind of around town or around the monastery.
I'm going to crush my chores, going above and beyond, doing a great job, being a great guest, and interested in everything I can learn about how this place works and what it might have been before these folks lived here.
I think as far as things go, I don't have a solid like time frame of what Kir Sabal, like when it was created. But this is very much an Aarakocran construction. Um I feel like kind of along those same lines as like where Mambala showed or like displayed signs of the different races having worked together in the past. There is certainly examples here where there was a time where the Aarakocra actually kept like this decking that traveled up the side of this cliff intact. And I think eventually coming across the right Aarakocra who could actually speak common, you would be able to pretty well understand that with the fall, I guess really with the rise of Rasni, um, and the creation of a lot of the undead in this land, that was one of the big moments where not only had like the upkeep kind of dropped from this place of that like ladder up the cliff face, but 100% it needed to be much more destroyed to that point, because the swamp that is effectively like about a mile south of where you all are right now, that was the castle of Rosny. At one point, that was a large stone structure of the undead lord that has basically plagued Chult. And Kir Sabal has always overlooked it from the rise of Rosny to his fall.
Oh wow, we're just a mile away, huh?
Yeah, so again, like on that actual like map, I guess really it's probably 10 miles. But it is a waste where like the actual death that kind of have surrounded the this I hate that word. I feel like the N is silent, so it is the sea waste. Um that whole thing is just a blight, where there is nothing but kind of like mud, and again like the signs of like dead trees. um Little bits of stone remain, but if you take some time to actually look down from Kir Sabal and you are looking, there's not enough stone remaining that you could even make out like the outline of any given building. Um, Theoretically, were you all to fly over it now, the same thing would be kind of what you can garner like from that is whatever structure Rosny had in that area was completely leveled. And let me actually get a perception from you all here. Yeah, so I think it would be enough for you all to kind of garner that bit of information. At some point, I think, Island, you are going to start to realize that there's something a little bit more kind of like animalistic, like bones kind of thing that you can spot there. Assuming at some point you all end up speaking about it, you can actually have Eku kind of connect some dots there, where part of the actual structure in the waste was actually that Rosny created his castle on the backs of giant tortoises. And part of those bones would still remain like this. What is it, like 40 to 50 years later? No, wait, 30 to 40 years later? I feel like that's about the time frame. Um, so part of that waste is actually still like the bodies of these giant tortoises. And part of the story maybe that would be shared by some of the Aarakocra is that this was the center of the undead going fully wild when Rosny lost control. And part of what this monastery has done has been a slow process of actually cleansing this area. So the land between the River Arlung and like Refuge Bay, that is among some of the safest and least contaminated by undead to this day because of this monastery.
Huh. So they're pretty fierce warriors, huh?
I wouldn't say that they are necessarily uh fierce warriors, but I feel like it is kind of one of those things where like when you think of something like Shaolin monks, they are definitely warriors of note. But it's one of those kind of interesting interplays of taking someone who has very many like passive or not passive, yeah, like follows like a pacifist ideal, but also has combat training. Like I did taekwondo when I was younger. One of the things that lasts even to this day in my life is this idea of I am never looking for a fight, but I am always perfectly ready to end a fight. And I feel like that's the kind of thing of what the peoples of Kir Sabal really are. Is they are very peaceful, but in the presence of undead and in the presence of somebody who would do them harm, they would be more than happy to kill something to prevent it from harming theirs.
And can we learn anything about the route to the Peaks of Fire to Omu?
What do you have in mind there?
Well, if we're gonna try to clear the city, we got to get there. Do we just follow the river? Is that really the whole? Does the river lead to the city?
So if you take the time to ask the Aarakocra and show them your map, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, totally.
So if you take the time to show your map to the Aarakocra that you're spending the day with, they will they'll kind of roll an insight for me actually. So they'll seem to be kind of like showing you a sense that you almost have all of the River Arlong there. I think among the things that you can kind of pick up is kind of a reference like towards the Aldani Basin. They'll show you where you have like the full river Soshin Star from the coast into the Aldani Basin. They'll do that same kind of like I'm gonna draw like this idea like if they draw with their hand from the coast in and then they kind of circle about the Aldani Basin, you'll see as they kind of draw in the River Orlong, and then they're going to circle about right off of your map. And effectively, what you can gather from that, which with that roll, is this idea that you have the entire River Orlong drawn on this map already. To follow the river, it's not going to take you too much further inland. Um, they're basically going to kind of show that um, you are getting close to like this is the entire mountain range of the peaks of flame, and I think they're going to probably be hesitant to kind of like draw any path between there. But shortly after you have that conversation, you're going to end up having kind of Nephir come back over and join you in like your task for that day, or if at that point you're kind of at the end of everything, you'll have Nephir kind of join you. And uh yeah, assuming it's towards the end of the day, we'll call it that, where Nephir returns, Eku is back around, and you'll actually have the conversation with the, let's see, the ritual of the seven winds. I feel like that's what I named it. Go back to my note.
Yeah, like the Dance of the Seven Winds, or yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yep, Dance of the Seven Winds. So at some point when they return and you have Eku and Nephir back about you, Nephir is going to kind of look to you, and the I guess it'll be through Eku's voice. The flight between Kir Sabal and Omu is dangerous, but it is perhaps the safest way for our travel. We might otherwise sail, as is our way, to the coast and come in from the south. They warn us that the dead are at their strongest between. Of course, I skipped off of the map. 1 second here. I need like way too many resources. Got 9 pages of notes open on my browser. So I'm going to kind of say the land between Lake Lua, which is the end of River Orlang. The land between Lake Lua leads into the Valley of Embers, where the air is poison. And she's basically going to show you that's like this area directly south. That's so many squiggles. That was a mistake.
Makes perfect
Um,
sense.
Basically, like this area north of the Peaks of Flame, that is the Valley of Embers, and the air is poisonous. So you can't like travel to the mountains and try to make your way there. The land that is to the west of Lake Loire crawls with the dead. If and she's going to kind of look back like to Nephir, like in that kind of moment of translating. If Ashara is able to do the dance of the seven winds for you, we will be able to fly to Omu. And the danger is great, but it is lessened. The dead, the gargoyles, and the other denizens of the city guard it and hold the land. But with flight, we can get there and mount our attack.
And do you think we are ready for such an undertaking?
The lands of Chult are riddled with death, and you have traveled further than many. We have one more quest before perhaps it is time for us to conquer Om. Ashara requires a black orchid that grows in only one place in all of Chult, with a past queen of Omu who fell from grace and has been imprisoned in her own home. And she's going to look back to Nephir at that point, and you'll hear him kind of replace, like, kind of say, like, a pretty similar word, and you'll kind of gather that he's kind of repeating something to her again. Um, and then she's going to say, Kananji was once the home of a great and beautiful queen, and in her exile, in her folly, it is Nangalore, the Garden of Lost Dreams. And that is the one place where the black orchid grows, and with its blessing, Ashara can grant you flight.
Jarek will look towards Taryn and Island, and sounds like we need to see if we can recover this orchid.
Certainly. Where is Nangalore? Is it near?
Put the little dot there. It's right actually where it says the river Orlung, basically, right above uh, the Lake Lu.
We're not far.
Oh, because so Lake Lua is where essentially the river Olong empties into, I guess, right? Is that the idea? Like south?
Opposite. You're basically climbing upward. So Lake Lua is where the river
Sourced.
originates. Yeah, coming out of those mountains.
Gotcha.
So it passes through Nangalore first. And it is effectively, like, the way they'll describe it is like a terraced garden. And it's one of those things where it is basically like kind of like a flood zone. And Nangalore is kind of like a flooded garden. I think of it kind of very much like some of the like architecture of like Thailand, where you have these like beautiful stone structures that are very much like kind of like flowing curves and kind of like bell-shaped objects on these different like terraced levels of like um, almost like rice kind of paddies, like rice fields. But just the idea of like that terrace construction, I feel like it fits kind of like the kind of like Thailand imagery. So effectively, with that conversation and with that little idea, you can kind of gather that this idea that um, to move forward, if you all would like the power of flight, the Dance of the Seven Winds is something that will give you about a 10-day of flight, which would be enough that you could fly to Omu, um, and you could bypass much of the dangers in between. But it is also not necessarily saying that you can come back. You may find yourself stranded there without flight. The other option is kind of in that recognition that the Aarakocra know humans tend to sail places, And one of the other ways to at least get close to that would be to kind of travel. And this is going to mess up all of those wonderful drawings that I did. Oh yeah, I don't even have the south side of this map on there. But to basically go to the Shilku Bay, which is kind of like almost like southwest of Omu, or the Cauldron is the bay almost directly south of Omu. But that would have you going through the lash like another like desolate land of like ash and smoke. Whereas if you go to like Shilku Bay and come from the west, you are going to pass through the Valley of Lost Honor. Um, but those are kind of like the options ahead of you all at this point.
I'm getting a very Mordorian vibe of like Omu and the Peaks of Flame and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of the type of thing where maybe you could call Omu damn, I can't believe I can't think of the name. The city that was like the capital, but it was between um the White City and then the city of the Nazgul. Because it was effectively like the king had the city on the river, the oldest son had the city that the Nazgul took, and then the youngest son had the White City that was the one that remained. I can't believe I don't have their names in mind. How often I've read those books when I was a kid. Um, but
Like a
it would
Minas serum thing.
Minas Tirith is the one that remained. Minas Morgul was the one that the oldest son had, and then the other one was an O, but I can't think of it offhand. But that was the one that was basically in the center of the river Anduin. Omu would almost kind of fit that idea. I feel like the Peaks of Flame are a pretty solid place to kind of call like a Mordor of sorts. But mechanically, like when you ask Eku, like, are we ready to go there? You all are definitely getting to the point where you can adventure around the like area of Chult, but in the long run, like you're kind of getting pretty close to like the maximum level that you should be allowed to level up before going to Omu.
Well, the idea of sailing there means we could sail back, which sounds great. But flying
You
sounds
also
so
have to
much more fun.
hire pirates or buy a ship.
Yeah, and I've got like 40 gold pieces. So flying sounds much more epic.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I feel like for the fact that like this is like the path you all rather organically chose, I don't feel like I really railroaded things happening here. You guys have made a pretty cool path about this to gain access to one, you decided to save Nephir. That was the first like influence towards even flying. And two, you come to this area where you find out like the actual prince and princess who would be the rulers of Chult are in this little place, and they have the ability to grant you flight that would allow you to basically fly directly to Omu. So, if you all have any thoughts, does it sound interesting enough where you want to push forward towards Nangalore?
Yeah, I mean I think that would be Jarek's next thought. He'd also be curious, like, do the merchant princes know of the existence of this prince and princess? Imagine they would probably be.
Roll an insight for me. You have a pretty solid understanding that the prince and princess would be little, very ill welcomed guests in Port Nyanzaru. Would they be better than the return of Baldur's Gate and the control of the Flaming Fists? Yes. But the merchant princes are already in power. They don't want to give up power to anybody. Is the princess going to require them stepping down? Probably not. But is it going to take some of their overhead? Probably. So I think, and I definitely think Jarek is among those who is most um, kind of like practically. Although Taryn's a thief, I feel like Taryn definitely understands economics. But yeah, you would definitely recognize that these two are a threat to the merchant princes. But at the same time, part of what you all are well aware of is the merchant princes, their sphere of power is Port Nine Zaru. It ends at the gate of the city, and they have next to no interest beyond that. Um, at best, it includes trade between the Sword Coast and themselves. Whereas these two are a new Chult in line of bringing Chult back into the fold.
Right. Something like she would essentially, if she gains power, she essentially expect them to become kind of like a vassal state almost and just like pay tribute, but for the most part, retain their autonomy.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, like, you already have heard her basically say, she's referred to like the Sword Coast as principalities. They're people who like basically serve her, or at least they serve at the leisure of her family. Um, she would require pretty much the same thing from Port Nine Zaru, only they're closer. But again, like, their take on it would definitely be, they're never going to listen to her say that. Um, but you guys can well assume she's probably the least of things that they want to hear about. Like, if you return to Port Nyanzaru, that would definitely be one of the things that you would have to seriously think about before you said in the presence of Wakandu Okinawa. Too many names today. But Wakanga.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what kind of Jericho's getting at with the questions. Like, do they know about like? But he would understand. Like, obviously, if they don't know about her, then telling them about her could be, could have a lot of repercussions.
Yeah, like I think with you guys spent very little time in Port Nyanzaru. I hope I didn't rob you guys of a fun time, but there was definitely like some stuff to do there. But like there's a merchant prince in Port Nyanzaru who her entire job is basically that it is illegal to murder in Port Nyanzaru, but you can buy effectively like forgiveness, and they kind of sell like one or two murders in every given year. Um, she's like one of those merchant princes. Like if a word ever got to her ear, you can pretty much guarantee that those two are going to be the two hits of that year. I don't think things like that would be unknown, especially to Jarek, but it probably to most of you all as a group.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking of like she's like the what's it like the Morag Tong from Morrowind, like the essentially licensed assassins guild.
Yeah, and that's what it without purely what it was. It was Jessamine. Um, but like she basically sells um I think they called it Jessamine's curse. And it was basically just saying like, oh no, my bad. That was something else. Sanctions. That's all it was. But she would basically ordain a few sanctions any given year. Usually, it's probably safe to say that there was one, maybe two. But if anybody found out about these two, there would almost be guaranteed sanctions against their lives. And that's purely business. Most of Chult would be happier under their rule than not. But the merchant princes in particular are seven individuals who have way too much for their, even with Wakanga, it's not necessarily that he's a bad person, but he has a monopoly over magic. Like, why would he ever want to give that away?
Yeah, I mean, just yeah, purely out of self interest. Like they like the status quo because yeah they're on top.
Yeah, but like if you started to see the rise of the Flaming Fist in Baldur's Gate, you might see them flip flop that, where perhaps they would be a third party who would, at least bolster the two of them while it was in their interest.
Right, right. Yeah, but Jarek's all for seeing if we can recover this black orchid uh, from Nangalore.
Me too. I'd like to know more about what's challenging about recovering the black orchid. Are there a lot of dead on the way, or is it poisonous? Like, why are they not just growing everywhere?
I mean, you've traveled through the jungle. This jungle eats people, so I don't feel like you would necessarily have Island asking what's challenging. Going anywhere in this jungle is challenging. Nothing
And we
about Chult has been easy.
Yeah, and I think
Think-
they did say that the land to the west of Lake Lua is like crawling with undead, and I don't know, maybe it's almost something like I don't know, it only grows in this one particular spot because I mean there could be any number of reasons.
All right, well, let's go. Let's do it.
Roll a D100 for me, Island. There are many who say that Zalcor haunts her garden of dreams. But the Black Orchid is one of her most prized possessions. And it was only by her will and her power that it ever grew there. And it has been many years since any have confirmed that it still grows. But among the most delicate of flowers is the orchid. And they have among the slowest of ages between when they flower. And to that effect, I'm pretty sure orchids take like often, like I think it's pretty regular that they're like 3 to 5 years before an orchid will actually like grow from the bulb. And then I believe like it's only like every like um sometimes like 10 to 50 years that orchids actually bloom with a flower. I don't think orchids just grow like normal flowers. Do we still have Chris conscious right now?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Excellent. We're going on like 32 hours for you. As far as things go, time wise, I am tempted to give you all at least like these first like almost half hour of time like exploring Nangalore. But I do want to ask you guys if we're gonna lose Larry early, if you all have thoughts as to what we will do with Nangalore.
And we're also hoping that at least Darcy might be back next week, right?
Yeah, theoretically we will have Darcy back next week. And if I didn't even in the moments like when he joined, I didn't even get his actual name. But if Green actually hangs out for a week and does join us, we would have him as well.
Yeah, so I'm almost thinking it might make more sense to kind of wait and kind of start next week with the idea that we're heading to Nangalore, rather than kind of start now and, like you said, you only really have 20 minutes before Larry has to go. But I don't know, Chris and Larry, what you think.
I was kind of imagining like we could get to the outskirts of Nagalore, and be so next week we're ready. But I don't know if it's a 20-minute trip or how you want to handle it. But I agree. Um, you probably want, if there's like ghosts and things to kill us, it'd be good to have a cleric around. I assume you use my character when I'm not here, right?
It varies.
Well, seems like a time that'll be helpful if there's ghosts.
Um, yeah. See, this is back to one of those things where sometimes I feel like traveling is definitely legit, but I have to throw a lot at you to even make it remotely interesting. And I'm kind of hesitant to necessarily throw something at the three of you that they won't encounter. But let me get a d20 from each of you. And then let me get a d100 from each of you, please.
280s. Wow.
I'm starting to think my dice is getting as tired as I am. I do not roll high.
Well, you're a trooper for making it, Chris. I'm sorry I got to go early. I got to go to I'm still got a work thing, but I thought 3 hours and 20 minutes was better than no hours. So,
Well, I think a lot of that ends up being kind of the randomness of everything. Um, it's one of those weird things also about like a session that I'm pretty sure is going to be role play heavy, like what Kir Sabal was kind of going to be.
I'm sort of pleased with us. I think we navigated Kir Sabal. I don't know what we missed, but I feel like we navigated it pretty well.
Oh no, I feel like you all did a solid idea there. But it's always one of those questions of, are you actually going to be straightforward with people, and try to bring them in and trust them as allies, or are you going to be hesitant and kind of keep them at bay? Because there's no way for me to ever predict what any group is going to do.
Yeah, Jarek is definitely thinking like if he had his choice between the princess and the prince, like he's thinking like, maybe the prince would be a better leader.
She kind of sucks.
But at the same time, it's like, well, given all the dangers in this land, maybe you need a strong, like, unlikable leader. But he's had his own previous dealings with kind of, you know shady people. So maybe it's just like maybe he's just being a little too um the word.
Pompous.
You're still talking about like a 13-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I think that Island though doesn't recall ever understanding that the Sword Coast was a like a province of Chult. So
No, no,
he
it's
thinks they're
not.
maybe a little crazy. They might be a little nuts.
100% is not. Her attitude should definitely be reminiscent of like Game of Thrones and the Dragon Queen there. That kind of thing where it's like the people of the rest of Faerun all uh, cheer and cry for my return to power. She is completely delusional. But at the
Yeah.
same time, you guys should somewhat recognize that Ashara raised her. Ashara has told them everything that they know.
Yeah, I was definitely getting like a Daenerys vibe from her. Like she's been and like yeah, she's been told like all of this is yours like her whole life. So why wouldn't she believe it? She's been told something
Exactly.
else.
Chris, can you roll another d20 for me?
I was thinking all the time, her and what army?
Uh, well, that was one of the other things. Like, let me get a d4 from Jarek and a d4 from Island. That's one of the other things where she like looks at the four of like at your group, and she's like, "I was understanding that Waterdeep and the Sword Coast was going to send an army to assist me." Um, so among the things that you all are going to encounter here, that was a really good roll, by the way, there, Chris. Um,
Thank you.
we're going to have you all passing by a few different things. Among them is a occasion where you all will pass an actual wooden box, kind of like off on the side of like the riverbank. Um, for what it's worth, I could have actually held you off, but what do you have in mind when you see a box just kind of like lonely here on the riverbank?
It needs to be investigated. What do you guys think? More
Yeah,
gorillas?
hopefully not. But
I'm like I'm traveling with like a fighter and a thief, right? And an
Yeah.
archaeologist. We can't help ourselves.
Do we see any sort of like markings on the box? Is it just like a plain wooden like crate kind of thing?
You can go for a perception check here. I think overall, as you kind of approach, you're going to see signs of it seems to have been kind of washed along the actual river here. Doesn't seem to have any signs of anybody walking up to it nor leaving this area. The box itself, I don't think would have any given sign. Um, yeah, I feel like that. I don't think you're gonna really see anything in particular.
So Jarek would suggest maybe Taryn, maybe you want to take a peek at it.
Traps?
yeah, I'll take a look, see if it has any kind of security, basically traps, locks, anything.
So do a perception check for me there.
This island's curious too if there's like any sense of magic coming from the box.
Do you have detect magic?
No, I just have like a good arcana sniffer.
Yeah, as far as Arcana goes, there's no actual sign of it being like a magical box. If you ever want to cast Detect Magic and you've got it, you can certainly do that. Looking over the box, Taryn, you don't seem to see any uh, devices attached to it. It doesn't seem to show signs that it was placed here. As far as things go, you would feel pretty comfortable that this box seems to just be sitting here, and it doesn't appear to have any traps.
Oh, doesn't seem trapped. Doesn't seem like it's been put here deliberately, at least. But so we should just open it up, see what's in it.
So you are prepared to open it?
I am prepared to open it.
Gotcha. So when you open this little case, inside you are going to find. My bad. When I say little, it's probably about like say like 12 or so inches wide about as far like deep, or yeah, let's say it's about a cube, about 10 or 12 inches, about like 25 centimeters in all three dimensions. But when you open it up, you are going to see inside that there are nine bottles. All of them are stoppered. Inside there appears to be some sort of residue along the bottom of this case. And kind of taking a little bit of a closer look, it would appear that two of the bottles have cracked. The bottles that are not shattered appear to contain a red liquid.
I'll take one of the not cracked bottles and open it up and try to smell it.
Let me just get a D100 from you. Um, I think it's safe to say with that you can kind of like tell this appears to have pretty similar um oh man, why can't I think like the French word ode comes to mind, sense,
Odor.
odor. There we go. Like eau de toilet, like thinking of a perfume. But yeah, it's got a pretty similar odor as to the healing potions that you received from Nanny Poo Poo.
Guys, I think these are healing potions. Like, kind of smell like it.
No, that's quite a boon. Any way to be sure?
I mean, there is one way to test, and Taran will take a knife and cut himself.
You're going to cut yourself and then chug one?
Yep.
You can indeed confirm that it heals the wound.
Wow, 6 healing potions. Should we split those up 2 each before our party members join us? Like, or we should share them when they get here.
I already actually have one healing potion, so I could take only one. Someone else could take more.
I have 0.
Yeah.
I have a lot of magic for these sorts of things,
Yeah, but magic runs out sometimes, so.
like all the time. So how do you want to split them up? 2 each, and then we hand them out when we see our companions next week. We can share them with them. Is
Yeah, we could do that.
that okay for you, Jarek?
The customary Justin lost Bluetooth and you're back.
Or is he back?
It's like a schedulable event.
I was like, his headphones run out at 3 hours.
I feel like he always loses sound about this time in a session. I don't even think it's battery. I think it's like the connection.
Yep, sorry, I'm back. I was just gonna say, like, for now we just, take 2 apiece, and we can redistribute them later as needed.
Sounds good. Nice work, Taryn.
This
Thank
is
you.
a welcome bit of luck.
For what it's worth, I really want to just give you guys the 7 because I think it's incredibly silly. And it doesn't actually tell you that those 6 are not something else, anyways. But like, I don't know. I think you guys need a better method for figuring out what a healing potion is.
What would be a better method? Just like Arcana
Identification.
check? Yeah, nobody's got that. Like nobody can do that.
That's why you get that spell. Yesterday in the other session Justin's a part of, guy like we're like throwing this magical item at him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna put it on because I don't know what it is." And I'm just like, "Holy fucking shit!" People need identification, and this is why.
Well, I don't have any pearls, so I mean, I could do the spell, but I don't have any pearls. So, um, I don't have a lot of little tiny things that I might want to have. So I think maybe that I missed an opportunity in Port Nine Zaro to have stuff. So I'll work on that for
That
next
was
time.
like the one chance I think that anybody really had. And at any given point, whether there was enough money for everything, that might be debatable. But if you want to holler at me about what you might have been looking for, we can certainly talk about it. Um,
Well, I
but
just
like,
had. I mean, I did get. I got healing kits, and then I ran out of money and weight, and I have like 40 gold pieces, so I didn't buy any pearls. So,
yeah,
but
so
next
that
time I'll
that
think
kind of
about it.
solves it. Because realistically, that's one of the things. I don't think this campaign is meant to have chances where you're going back and forth on a regular basis. That's one of those things. Their time is very much um, a resource here.
What do you think more about like when we lost all our stuff? I thought, oh, what components do I have that I can actually cast spells? And I don't really have, like light. I don't have any fireflies in my pocket because they're not something that you can actually like is actually
Where's
seems
your
like a
holy
thing.
symbol?
I have that. I just don't have components.
Yeah,
Um,
so your holy symbol is your spellcasting focus, which means anything that doesn't have a value associated with it, you can cast with that focus in hand. Um, the security thing is like if somebody knows you're a cleric, they might try to take your focus from you, and that's where like having you said dragonflies for light. If you collected dragonflies, you could say like, I'm going to purchase some dried dragonflies, and I would like to wrap them up into a little bracelet that I am going to just make like of a 3 folded over bit of cloth and wrap around my wrist. So I have this little bracelet, and that way it's like I always have access to these dragonflies because nobody's going to think to take this little cloth bracelet from me. In the same way where sometimes it's easy to say it's unsaid, but I feel like if you ask Taryn where he has his thieves' tools, I think a good thief would have every single different piece of his tool set in a different kind of hiding place around his person. And that's where I would say like he should have kind of little folds almost like sewn into his belt where he can pull a thieves tool from, not necessarily any given one, but like one of the tools from his set. And like you were away from it, but like Darcy, we made a point. She was asking a pretty similar question where we went and acquired, she wanted to get some bat dung, bat guano. And that was one of those things where she bought, well, I guess actually Chris stole a little bit of bat guano for her. And that's one of those things where it is essentially assumed that you could take Darcy's wand or staff, whatever her spell focus is, and she would have access to one fireball before that was kind of consumed, kind of thing.
got it. And then this stuff's not really in. Um, it's not really like in the material you can purchase when you look for items on D&D Beyond. So I guess I just have to think about it and manage it
Yeah, any given
outside
spell
the
component,
economy.
again, like your holy symbol is one thing that accounts for everything that doesn't have a value. You can buy a component pouch to give yourself a second little backup. And it's a second little thing for people to overlook. That is a spell focus. And then you can also buy individual components. Um, but yeah, like if you're looking for a particular thing that is 100% not really a part of the game, it's, you go to Port Nyanzaru and you say to me, I would like to try to buy some dragonfly. Or eventually I need to buy um, a golden chalice that is gemmed and is valued at over 1,000 gold. Those are the type of things where eventually you will have stuff that has prices, a pearl that is worth 100 gold. Those are the kind of things where in the long run, those are the important components. The other ones are just the question of how sure do you want to be that you can cast this when you need to.
Yeah, like Revivify and Identify are two things I'd like to be able to cast, and maybe Light. Just that all these items are not necessarily the um, in the items. Just like search for them, you don't find these things components. So pearls, yes. Diamonds, yes. Phosphorescent moss, no. Um,
Yeah,
so
those are simply just ask me kind of thing.
I never thought
Um,
about it because we never lost our stuff, but now I thought about it because we lost our stuff.
but yeah, again, like you held on to your holy symbol, you were never actually without the ability to cast magic. So traveling through the forests at some point afterwards, um, Island and Terran, but realistically, Island, would notice a stone statue off in the distance. Can you roll a d4 for me, please, Island? And then roll a d100 for me, I think. And let me get a perception from all of you as well. So as you all get a little closer to this stone statue, you're going to see it kind of covered in like a lot of vines and just kind of like the jungle has grown up around this thing. Approaching closer, you are going to see signs that this is a cat person, what you all would understand as the tabaxi. And kind of they're covered in all of these different vines and things, and you can see most of its features. There's certainly parts of it that are kind of like broken off and the stone has started to crumble, but some of the form is there. Let me get a religion from, I think, just Island. Yeah, let me get a religion from you, Island. Um, it is going to be recognizable, but that this is a form of Ubtoa in Tabaxi form. That this is a sign of kind of the almost like a prototypical form of Ubtoa, recognized as like the Tabaxi are one of his kind of creations, like in Ubtoa's own image, kind of thing. But at the foot of this creature, you're going to see a bunch of like bone jewelry and different things kind of scattered about this thing's foot. Um, it seems like creatures visit this, maybe not all that regularly, but also it is not like completely lost to the jungle.
Is there anything really valuable?
As far as things go, like in general, you could collect like a bone necklace or something, but for what it is worth, you're going to probably attribute this more towards like something that Kroot would wear rather than somebody like in Port Nines are.
I'm for kind of leaving it sacred. What do you guys think?
Yeah, is it possible to tell, like, is the bone like how the bone jewelry was carved? Like, is it crude, or does it show signs of being, um, worked by tools?
That's kind of what I was getting at with the idea that it would be more like a grungs kind of thing. I would say it's kind of on that cruder end of it. I could not think of such a good word.
All right, guys, I gotta
Gotcha.
run. See ya. Thank you.
Peace out, Larry. Have a good one. We'll catch
See
you
you
next
next week.
week.
Yeah, later.
See you next
Night,
week.
night, Chris. Have a good sleep.
Thank you.
Later.
Yeah, but I mean, and Jarek would defer to Island if he thinks it's maybe best to just kind of leave this stuff here. That's he's Jarek's fine with that.
Yeah, I think that was like the final thing that he kind of said before stepping away. So I feel like that is a pretty solid understanding um, for you all to kind of come to that this isn't necessarily something of value as it is like a recognition that you all are in kind of the heart of the jungle of sorts. Um, and the other kind of encounter that you all rolled for there was a point where you all are going to approach, and there are going to be some kind of very colorful flowers ahead of you. Let me have you all roll a history check. I guess for the two of you, that is just an intelligence. So if I tell the two of you that the predominant colors of the flowers ahead of you are yellow, red, and orange, does that bring anything to mind?
It brings to mind nothing.
Danger.
Oh,
Yeah,
Good.
he'll be.
So that was a really good random encounter to roll because you guys are reminded that there are very deadly flowers in this land, and you guys have a nice little hint of what is kind of in front of you here.